Okie dokie. All right, we're forward, and we're doing this. We're launching the largest esoteric library on the internet for free. We're doing that in conjunction with the Resistance on Esoteric Radio. And I have Carlos present, very valuable Resistance member, supporter, advocate, and we're doing this. And so we're about 11 minutes from showtime, and there's just so much that we have here to tell the world today. What we're going to attempt to do is put that into 2 hours, and we're going to, of course, have to start this like no one's ever heard us before, because there's going to be a lot of people tuning in that have just got the invite off of Facebook and things of that nature, and are just knowledge seekers and want the knowledge. And so what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to condense what we talk about on the Resistance and where we're going, what our mission is, in a short period of time. And so we have 10 more minutes.
Wholeness and balance to everyone, and I just want to say a few words that it's been a real privilege to see all this happen, and the impact it's taken in my life, and achieving the things that are in the future, in the very near future. And I want to send out a welcome to anyone that wants to be part of this and see the direction that we're going every day.
Until showtime.
Good day to everyone. It is December the 19th, Sunday, 2010, and we are here today in the studio unveiling the largest esoteric library on the internet. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a moment to get some of the things corrected here. We have a live stream session going on for those that want to tune into that. They can go to www.livestream.com/innerstanding. So that's www.livestream.com/innerstanding. And we're going to go ahead and get this chat session going on for all of those that are tuning in on the Blog Talk show. You can go to www.blogtalkradio.com/Sevan. That's SEVEN. And there is a chat box there because it appears that our live stream chat box is not functioning correctly. So what we're doing today is a very big benchmark. It's also going to be one of the final times that we talk personally towards the end of this year, and we're going to be bringing in a new year, which is going to be incredible. 2011 is definitely staged for major things to happen, and we're all looking forward to those things. And we feel like personally here at the Resistance that if we can give everyone the tools that they need, the tools that are necessary for them to get to the levels in which they wish to achieve, then we could see a better reality. And so a part of our forwarding mission, which is our actual mission to bring that about and to accomplish that, is to put the tools in place, put the tools into a person's hands and let them be the judge of what they feel like is going on in this reality. And since that has began, we started first with a cipher. And so before we get into that, I wanted to say anyone that is calling into the switchboard, if you are calling to and you want to get on the line later on to ask a question, you only have to press, I believe it is number 1. And so those are for people that are in the particular chat room. Also, again, we are hosting this from live stream, and I'm going to put that address in the chat box, which is www.livestream.com/innerstanding. And it will be important for you to go to the live stream session at least at some point in order for you to be able to get the proper links to the library. And so before we uncover that, I also wanted to introduce Carlos. I'm in the studio. He's a very, very, very strong supporter and member of the Resistance. He's here in the studio today as we accomplish this major feat. And I'm sure Carlos has a couple things to say.
Yes, good day, Resistance, wholeness and balance to everyone. First off, just want to make sure that everyone understands that this is a major milestone for us. There will be more, but they're all the pedestals of ascension for us. And this has been a big impact in my life personally. And I just want to know that everyone knows that I have the privilege of being here.
Awesome, awesome. So this is how we begin today. Is we're going to talk about a lot of things, and that's why the show actually was that we increased the time of today's show. We went from 1 hour to 2 hours in order to be able to compress what's needing to be expressed here in the time that we have. And what I will let everyone know is that this show is being recorded, and they will be able to find clear copies of the show at any point in time. So if there's any type of information that they needed to receive from the show, you can go back and get it at a certain point. So basically what I wanted to talk about is it's necessary for us at this point to treat this particular call, this particular time, as if no one has really heard of who we are and what we're doing. And we feel like that's very important because a lot of people receive different messages from Facebook and from sharing with different friends about the library being unveiled. And some people that are just into knowledge, as many of us are seekers, decided to tune into today's show and to get that information. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick sound test here really quick. And because I'm hearing on the chat line that the sound keeps coming in and out. So if everyone would just give us a brief moment, we're going to do a quick sound test. And we are in Costa Rica, so. Okay, let's. Okay, we're going to do a brief sound test here in order to be sure that that we're getting broadcasted correctly, so that we know that everyone can hear us correctly. Okay, we are doing the sound test now, and I see Isaac here in the chat room. Isaac, could you tell me how the sound is on your end? And also if you're logged into the live stream widget, how the sound is on that end before we begin today's show, so we can make sure the sound is clear. Okay, that interference should calm down here in a moment as some of these applications actually settle in. There's quite a lot of bandwidth being used in order to be able to host both programs, but it's really one of the only ways that we can get today's show accomplished the way that we would like to. Okay, so we're going to go from here, and what I would like to do first is I'd like to pull up the screen here. And this is going to allow us to go over very briefly what has been taking place on the dimension, what has been discovered, how we discovered that, and the decisions that were made after we discovered it. It's going to be very important. So basically, what my personal ascent into spirituality was, or is, because it's always going on, is a pursuit to actually begin as a pursuit to know God on a personal level, to have a vivid experience with God. And at the stage of my life when I was at that particular level, I agreed to myself that I would not just take what anyone had to say to me, and I would get deeply involved into discovering what it is that we needed to know about this relationship that was going on between us and our spirituality. So I'm going to put this here. And I'm going to change this view here to a web layout. And so how this began is after I began to study and began to pray and begin to humble myself and going through Gnostic Christianity, I seemed to open up a channel of communication with the deities, as I give the term, that belong to the Bible. And we give those deities the common term, God. So what happened is that in my pursuit for God in its truest extent, what I wanted to do is I wanted to say, okay, God, I want to have this relationship with you. I want to talk to you. I want to know what you're really about. I need your help in my life. And so that pursuit started for me very serious. And what it eventually led to is a door being opened to another world. A world of many of the things that people aspire to do in this particular realm, but somehow feel locked out of. That world involved controlling the sleep, the dreams. That world involved making contact with other beings. That world involved even somewhat of a war that was taking place between what I believe was the classic good and evil. And as I began to accelerate into this spirituality, which I was doing on a very serious level, and always having an analytical mind, meaning a mind that's going to think about every single integer, I started to discover several inconsistencies with what was being written versus what was really happening. But because I had already gotten so deep into it, as many of us have started off in Christianity or started off in Islam, and have gotten very deep into the religion, the occultation, as I call it, meaning the actual process of how to change a physical being that has the ability to be spiritual and has the faculties to become spiritual into a spiritual being. Meaning, how do you get a person to aspire to higher things? And then that's where the God concept enters. And so what started to develop within my encounter with this being we were calling God at this point, which was going through the Bible, is my perception of understanding what exactly was going on in the spiritual realm. So this later led to, because I was in search of something that the Bible often spoke of, which was a name. And it talks in a couple areas about the Bible, if you start to study the Bible very deeply, that there are certain names, and that even the Messiah was to have a name, and no one knows that name. And even the God of the Old Testament makes a very large deal of making sure that the name is kept. And so where this discovery led to is it led me all the way up until the point where I can give people the knowledge that's necessary to discover what is exactly going on, not only with their major religion, but also the religion that's in secrecy. Because everything here on this dimension is like a mirror, which is when you could see one side of it, but another side of it you don't understand much about. And so this advent of this knowledge is about unveiling this knowledge to everyone so that they have it at their disposal, so that they're not just listening to what I'm saying or what a few other people have been bringing up about the etymology behind words and the origins of the God itself. But they can have the information themselves and go ahead and study it. And so, since some people have tuned in definitely into the line to get the information about the library, what we'll do early in this recording is we'll reveal the location now of the library. And where we're going to do that first is we're going to do that first in the chat box of the Blog Talk Radio forum. Okay, so the domain that you will see appearing is www.issue, that's issuu.com/the resistance. Once again, that's www.issuu.com/theresistance. Now, what's interesting and what you'll see here is a cache of approximately 1,100 of the most occult, spiritually inclined, deeply thought out, religiously laden library that I've seen in my time of browsing through the internet. And in my time of browsing through the internet, I've come across several things. Like in the beginning when Scribe.com, and many people are familiar with Scribe, in the beginning when Scribe.com started to allow people to upload books, there were many things that were coming onto Scribe.com that were just phenomenal. And those things were removed within maybe a week or two of them being posted. And so there were several times that when I would see certain works, I would always make sure, even if the person had uploaded maybe 100 or 200 books, I would make sure I spend the night in downloading those books. And sure enough, at times I would go back to the library and it would be, and the whole library would be gone. And I'd be thankful that I downloaded that. And so what happened was I started to not know whether or not I should ever release some of the information that I had. So I started to comment a lot about what I had found in these different books, and I would always get to, of course, certain parts of the book, because many books are steered towards a particular dogma or agenda. And I would get the knowledge, but I would know if I released the book, then I would always run the chance of the person falling into or being coerced by the knowledge that was in the book. So it was a problem for a while, me making the decision to ever release this knowledge into the public. But with all things, as I see 2011 is a whole different thing. Like I've gone through so much in 1 year. I believe we've aged thousands of years. We've literally gone from being what I would consider as asleep to all of a sudden being thrown all this information about where we're really at, what we really are, what we're supposed to do. And then we were given a very short time to regroup and to actually do that. And many people came in to assist on various levels. And so one thing that I wanted to make it very clear about is the resistance caters to the seeker that asks all the questions. He asks or she asks all the W's, the what's, the whens, the whys, the wheres. And until they get those answers, their soul, their mind is never satisfied. And that's the phase that we're here on, and that's, for better lack of words, in this grand plan of ascension for the species, that's the role that we play. And at times, of course, because there's another part of the factions, as I call them, that allow and tell a person, look, you need to relax on thinking about the world for now and just get yourself together. You need to understand that everyone's karma is their own karma, and that you need to just get yourself personally together. And so there's one part of that phase. And then there's another part of the phase that says, hey, you need to get out there and you need to get in and solve the problem. So look at what we're actually experiencing. And this is what we experience in the yin and the yang, or the eastern or the western, or the different polarities that are on this dimension. What we're literally experiencing is we're having to be two ways. And that's where I wanted to hone in on today. Because in a lot of the knowledge that we're looking at right now, in this particular library, the biggest question would be, well, if you've read any of this stuff, or all this stuff, or a quarter of this stuff, could you just help me out and save me time from reading all of this? And just tell me, what did you find out? And what I'll tell you is this. It was as simple as the knowledge that we just recently came into because of the ascension cycle, meaning that we go into these phases that last for a certain period of years. So let's say the last 9,000 years, things have been reset somewhat and souls have come back, and now we're living in this particular reality. And we started on a certain level of knowledge. And most people can identify now that a great deal of that knowledge has come from the pyramids. Because the scholars of the time, the people who were attempting to learn something, were always looking at that pyramid and saying, what's in there, or what is that about? And it's always been the knowledge that within the Sphinx there was located a library, and in that library contained all the information that one needed to know about Earth, its measurements, and its system and how to run it. So the interesting part is that we will automatically have to see that some grander being set the whole thing up and then said, here, start to be fruitful and multiply and do what comes next in the dimension. And where this actually puts us now is it puts us with the ability to be able to scan the knowledge that has come forth for the last, I could even go back, I would say, into 60 million years, because of the knowledge that's been collected over time in man's last segment of existence. So what we saw is that the first thing about high levels of knowledge is that there's an encryption. And what the encryption serves to do is it serves to keep what they call the profane, or the people that cannot understand it and it'll only be harmful for them, to keep them away from it. And how the Egyptians chose to do this, and the Sumerians, the Ogiagians, and all the different names, the Kemetans, and all of these different schools of thought that were blending together even at that point, is they zoomorphied, the term is zoomorphied all of the actual animals that corresponded to the energies that existed here on this planet. And there are two main energies that are the most important on this planet in order to create. One of those energies is electric, and another one of those energies is magnetic. So with this electric and this magnetic connection, this particular energy can create energy, free energy, and free energy basically perpetuates any society, perpetuates thought. And then language, which is a program in itself, begins to develop itself within the person's mind. So okay, I see IM says, we are the library, access information within. We say access information within and without. And that's really where the Eastern and Western worlds have really come into place. And we're going to address a lot of things just directly here because we do have 2 hours on the line. And I believe that personally that this is, again, becoming such a large hallmark for what's really going on in the spiritual world is a time for us to address many of the ideas and concepts that have been going on in the spiritual world. And like I started this conversation, there's 2 ways that we have to learn to be. And we can see that the Western world is extremely external. But we can also see that the Eastern world is extremely internal. And with that, a type of internalism has allowed a lot of the information that the Western world is now needed, which we're now getting to just now get into our hands. However, because the Western world has been living in materialism, meaning that we've actually been, as Westerners, living in a reality that has gotten tiring to us. We have a great benefit because in many cases there, I see in other countries where they've been raised on the indigenous habitat, them wanting to actually go into this Western world that tears a person up and takes years off their life, but teaches them many different things very fast. So it's like the advanced course. And so what we're talking about here is we're talking about having the ability to allow your ladder to connect. And what this is really about is this is about many people, they're either strung out on one phase or another. And this is either extremely high in the clouds, very euphoric, very angelic, very positive, etc. That particular wave of energy. And then we have another group of individuals that are low vibration, density, very material, very dense, very ignorant, etc. And we have a dimension with both of these individuals on it. So this means that anything in between those 2 integers is possible. And what we started to learn, especially from much of the knowledge that you see, is that a lot of it is based on mathematics. Meaning that the level of possibilities on the dimension, the level of different experiences that we have are still limited to a certain number. And every time one expands, they go into a higher matrix or a higher level with more finite numbers because there's not chaos going on here. Meaning that there's actually an order to how the creators are building these dimensions in order to keep so many different advanced beings from actually interacting with each other in a more or less very negative way. I believe that when we look at our world and we see the wars, the world wars, then we see completely the extreme of when no one's getting along. And the time that's elapsed between those type of conflicts, as we see we're now in another one, is only a certain period. And the great part of knowledge allows us to understand where we need to go, which is that we need to become universal. When we start to read something that someone's written in their particular language, from that moment it's not universal or relative to the person that speaks the language opposite to theirs. Meaning that many of the belief systems that we see, the moment that a name is mentioned, whether it's Jesus, whether it's Saturn, the moment that a name is mentioned, then a whole database of information is called up. So yes, much of the information as we've tapped into just even from a crystal database, because we understand that inside of our mind there's a crystal that resides within there. And they love to refer to this crystal as the pineal gland. And the interesting thing about the pineal gland when studying it is it has a particular time in which it's supposed to open. It's like an egg that cracks open. And once it does, the person then becomes perceptive of the next level of things for them. So in this case, the egg is always cracking or always opening up more and more and allowing more light, as they call it, to come in. And so we can really take this since everyone does have a link here, and we got about an hour and 30 minutes in the show, we can just take this moment to really scan over things, because I feel like right now there's a lot of things that have happened on this earth that not too many people are aware of. And because they're not aware of that, they have a very, very loose understanding of what's actually happening in this reality. And so thus, even though they boast great things, meaning that they can talk a lot and give you a really high level of perspective, they show very little within their actual mental and physical power. Meaning that when a person is activated, in my experiences with activation, which took place for a 3-week period, and the data that was flowing through my mind, I was able to retain much of that. And the power in which I was able to utilize at that point, I was able to later on examine what that power was capable of doing and where it came from. And where this power came from when going into a high vibration was from the activation of the chakras. The chakras are more like a thermometer, where the root chakra itself is the one that's turned on most of the time. And then as a person begins to build up the pranic fluid, chi fluids, ming fluids, all these different fluids that are in the base of the spine, then the person starts to turn on these extra chakras. And at any point that they leak any of these fluids, then just as a thermometer, it goes back down into the lower chakras. So this literally makes it where it's a constant thing every day in order to stay into the higher levels of chakras and to not be pulled down or seek energy. Then there's other things that we discovered about the earth, because of course human beings have unlimited potential. But I would suppose that if you have a atom or something that's very powerful, and it's not like a breaker box somehow governed, then it would just destroy everything. So it's basically like if you run the power from your street right into your house, into your TV, you'll blow out your TV. It's got to come through the breaker box first, it gets converted, and then the amount of power goes out that's necessary. And so what's happening on our dimension is that, this is, once you start getting into further levels of thinking, you realize that when they're saying that these beings are here for our energy, like a lot of times there's this notion now that everything is here for our energy, is draining our energy, that was already known. The dimension that we live on has a symbiotic relationship where just like you eat a carrot, just like you drink water, those are living things, and you take the energy from that, and certain things convert your energy, your sadness, your happiness, your love into other things. And that has always been the relationship that's going on here on earth. The key has always been to stay in balance and not exert or take too much of the energy. And so we can definitely see here the training wheels that come along with how to learn how to do that, how not to pull a person's energy and how not to give a person too much of your energy, and just the dynamics that take place in learning that one lesson alone. Not to mention there's many lessons to learn. So what has been done here from my deeper studies on this planet is the energy that we're carrying has been hacked into, for better lack of words, and there's been certain things that have been turned off, scheduled to turn on at a certain point. And how this is controlled through the ley lines of this earth that we're living on. And so there's a big question that needed to be answered and I know many people had asked the question or wonder if I ever answered the question directly, which was, are we living in a real reality, a Gaia, a Maya, a Mother Earth, a womb, an actual living being, or are we living in 0-1, a matrix, holographic projection, etc.? My answer to that question is, which one are you living in? Meaning, if you look closely at an individual and how they're thinking, if you're eating clone food, if your mind thinks like a computer and you have no emotion and no senses, if you behave like this, then yes, you're in artificial reality because you're not even tuned into it. However, if you're helping the planetary system, if you're tapping into the network that's here and the grid system and all the different tools that are here, the crystals and the elements and the many different things that are here, the plants, to actually get your body onto a higher organic level, then that's what you're doing. So the question is are you working to live or are you working to die? And this is how one governs ultimately where their mind state is set. Because here's the difference. When you go to your job, if you have a job, and regardless of what the reason is, if you're at the job and the job is saying, okay, your only benefit from being here is money, you get money. Because what money really is and because the frequency it's on, then it's dead. So what literally happens is that when a person is working in their job, they're working towards their death, and they know that. They feel that, man, I got to get out of this job. It's a dead end. Now, working to live is like going to the gym, and that's why this is very finite. It's very easy for you to see the difference in the two. If you're in the gym, you're working out. You're having a hard time pushing up that weight. However, when you're done, because you've increased your blood rate, because you've done all of this stuff and your body is now in better shape, you're now working to live. So it's very easy at times, if we go back to some of the simple things, to see where we need to go realistically. If it's a matrix, which means a womb, a place where things are cultivated, the necessary procedure that would be for us to get to a higher level would mean we would have to gestate from this particular womb into the next one that's larger, which has more experience, etc. How to do that would definitely be just like a child. When a child leaves its mother's womb, it leaves its mother's womb because the child is too big. It's reached the 9-month period. Notice the number being used. And now, in most cases with the masses, and now it's time for it to exit into another womb. So now we're going to talk about, very briefly, the portals to this planet and how we can read every single thing that's going on here on the planet through what we call the fractal, meaning the smaller or larger version of the big picture. So what I see connecting to this planet is a tube. And this tube is referred to at times as the wormhole, the holy, zero. The reason why whole is zero is because it's literally a portal. It means nothing that's here, everything that's not here, everything that you've never discovered, but you got to take another portal to another world, because you cannot try to take the construct of this world and then put it into the new world. The new world has its own construct. So the thing is an opportunity to be able to go into a broader construct if the one that you're currently in, you're maxed out on. And so this happens for people at various phases. Some people can sit on the porch in their town all day and never even desire to even leave the town and be totally content. while another person cannot even stay off a plane for a moment, can't stay still. They just have to be international. And so we get that and everything in between. And so what this is allowing us to know is that when you're ready to go to the higher level, regardless of your philosophies and what you think is going on, now we're going to show you that the information and the knowledge has always been available. But if you want to root yourself, meaning that if you want to take the other path that we've already discovered not to really get anywhere, as Einstein says, you cannot develop anything new using the same way of thinking. Meaning, or it says, we can't solve problems using the same thinking that created them. So this is about getting into a higher level of thinking, a universal level of thinking. But before people can do that, it's obvious at this point that they're going to need to prove some things. Meaning that when you tell them that, hey, this is what's going on with the whole Jesus thing. This is what's going on with the whole Christian thing. This is what's going on with the whole Judaism thing. And when they get that information, not to feel offended because they want to accept the story that they already know has been tampered with so many times by a source that we know has never been accurate at giving us correct information. We cannot forget what has been going on in our history and imagine that's changed because our reality right now is only inclusive to light workers. Meaning that light workers on this planetary system, as far as people who believe in the New Age level of spirituality, still don't outnumber the military. So the thing is that if we can make a sober estimate of exactly what's taking place here on this planet, then we could benefit the most. And that's what gaining the knowledge is about. It's about not using your ego or your geo, your earth mind, your material mind to decipher what's really happening here through your emotion, but using your intellect in the higher levels, or the magnetic levels of your knowledge in order to be able to access what you really need to have, which is both. And so we're going to explain it. What we see within a lot of the ancient cultures is you see this ultimate uniting of the bird and the serpent. And this fortifies all religious belief systems when you trace them to their actual origins. And so we'll give a few examples of the birdmen. And if you look very closely on many of these pictures, which I won't be able to show here, but I will on the pre-recording of this where we're going to add the pictures, you'll notice, and many are very familiar with these pictures, you'll notice that many of these beings carry not just a bird type structure, but also the snake type structure, or have chosen to be one or the other. And so this becomes Kukulkan. This becomes Jesus or Zeus, which the term Zu means bird and S means serpent. This becomes many of the stories that you see within Egypt where the pharaohs have a serpent and a bird on their headdress. And what this is really about, as we see in the Tibetan faith, as you continue to look deeper into things, we see that the bird is the magnetic energy. It's the light energy. It's the subtle forces that become very hard to perceive that make up a myriad of abilities. And the earth has, from the gentleman that's tapped the ley lines of earth, they say they've already identified 40 different types of energies that can be used for various things. One particular energy seemed to respond to anyone that had already crossed over and you were inquiring about them. While one particular energy charged up all of the things that were on the ley line, and one particular energy made everything sit that was on the ley line. So these various energies that are encased in Earth's ley line are also encased within our body. And that's why the trace minerals become very important, because much of the trace minerals have the elements inside of them that we will never get in food again, and that we've had a long time, we've spent a long time replenishing in our body. And so once the body and once the earth gets these levels of minerals in tune with each other again, and all this, as they say, is supposed to happen actually at the same time, that Earth itself, this planet's Kundalini, will awaken and cause many of the individuals that are here to awaken in consciousness, which we see happening. Much of that, as I've now noticed, comes from the influence of the planetary systems. The influence of the actual light. They talk a lot about lights and light beams and things of this nature and take in the light. But the fact is that light is a lot more specific than us just thinking about one particular color. As we see in the sky, if you look very closely, you'll see shimmerings of violet, shimmerings of red. And so these frequencies and transmissions that we not only take from our sun, but the immediate planetary systems change the consciousness that's going on this planet, mainly the moon. And the reason is because the moon heavily affects our magnetic energy. And that magnetic energy in turn allows this area in our brain, which is the hippocampus region, I like to call it the bird's nest, to be able, it stimulated itself by magnets, which is what was discovered in the pineal gland experiment with the North Pole of a magnet. But the energies, the two energies are very important because it actually tells a story of the progression of man. It appears that the five-pointed star, which they call pi, is the actual diagram for the previous edition of man. And we've definitely done a lot of study into the pentagon and the pentagram and its origins and magic to discover what exactly makes it so mystical. And it also is a grand point at this level to tell everyone exactly what it's about. And because it's something that I've always wanted to know just the actual truth on, and to have it means the five elements, and it means the five planets with Venus on top ruling. What it really is about is that the symbol of the previous man in his perfect state is the upright five-pointed star. So you can only imagine if someone chooses to turn that star upside down, what that actually symbolizes, because the five-pointed star, which is also breaks into pi, breaks into golden mean, is also the format of many of the different fruits and plants and things of this nature. So any time that this star would become inverted or someone would use that as their symbol, then that means that they're everything against the perfection of nature in which we can clearly see exists. The interesting part about it is we discover that with everything there's an antithesis. There's a thesis or antithesis, or there's a life and then there's a death. And what we're having to discover is how to mold those two and how to become creators with those two. So in this case, we'll call life and death magnetic or electric. Now it appears that if you walk into a high magnetic field, you would experience all sorts of what you would call life. There would be paranormal experiences, there would be regeneration of the skin, regeneration of the body, and many know about this with some of the different chambers and the magnetic chambers, especially even in Saqqara, that have been shown to heal people. And then it seems like almost on the opposing end, if you walk into a highly electric field, which we're actually in, it would begin to deteriorate and wear down your body. And so this electric we know now as the L. Because the story actually goes, much of the actual information that is known about the particular individual Jesus, written in the New Testament, is actually the story of Pythagoras. And the story of Pythagoras is very interesting because it's actually plagiarized from the Bhagavad Gita. And it actually explains how not only the father of the being we now know as Zeus, but the son were in the planet playing the God and Savior role. And in this, both of them ended up making errors. And many people are yet to know about this. I'm sure, more than sure, as long as you continue to read into the library that was provided, you'll see that the papacy has no interest in telling anyone what's really going on here. Not to mention, it's way more than what most people can believe. So none of our conversations at this point are going to be catered to individuals that have not at least read up on the current knowledge that has been put together by individuals such as Nassim Harriman, David Icke, Michael Tessarian, even the Theosophical Society, Annie Besant, Ledbetter, the Seven Bodies, the Bodies of Man. Many of the different factions, and that's why we chose to be non-biased with the library, because we realized that each person was in possession of some high level of knowledge, and that's how they ended up getting so high. However, within having tunnel vision at times, if you don't have the whole picture because you don't have the internet, which many of these people did, if you don't have the whole picture, it's easy for you to immediately judge that this is what you're supposed to be doing because you don't have the whole story. So the story of this individual, which was known as Indara, and his son, is just this, that in conceit and in pride one fell for 10,000 years to earth and took the form of a snake. And from that point was to teach individuals how to become a bird, basically, because it had already been a bird. And the interesting part about this is that the reason why we know this story is true is because we've now discovered in archaeology that serpents evolved into birds. And that's 100% verifiable. So, as we see with this deeper level of knowledge that's here on this tablet of earth to give us the information about what's really happening here, we see that the draconian system, which says that humans are wingless dragons or worms, may be in fact true if one remains in a snake-like state. And in this snake-like state, which seems to plague individuals first within the language, as we talked about within the English language, these words sir, sar, sor, sir, and sir all meant snake. And in our language, when one would make a gesture like, hello, sir, or in the military, they say, yes, sir. The gesture is basically saying, yes, snake. So what we already discovered, as David Icke has gone into in various levels, and I've definitely done my work in going into it in various levels, that the lower degenerized level of our existence is within electric. It has its own power. We cannot deny its power. It's controlling things on the dimension. However, there's more to be gained. So anyone that gets caught up into these religions for a prolonged period of time start to gravitate towards certain levels of knowledge that are very limited. And what that's done is it's stagnated much of the growth of the dimension. And so now we're here to boost it because people will have the knowledge of understanding what exactly they're doing. When you start to read anything that's from another religious faith, it checks back to a number. Then that number checks back to a planet. And so in the old days, if you said, hey, I'm number 3, they already knew that you represented the dogma of the Trinity and everything that existed of, which anyone that represented that knew. Now you have people saying that they represent something that they don't know the full entirety about, and it's caused big problems. In fact, that's what the whole of most of this New Age movement is full of. We get it all the time. Individuals that are so gung-ho about their internal feelings, namaste, love and light, and because they just now started reading something about Eastern mysticism, never realizing that, hey, we already read about it. We understand what's going on about it, and we're going to tell the Westerners and even the Easterners exactly how to steer around some of the clip-offs that are involved with things such as the Kabbalah, involved in things such as the drawbacks of things involved, such as just the religious dogma itself, or what's involved in the term is still Kabbalah, which is not so much related to the Jewish Kabbalah, but a term that means a group of individuals that are together in secrecy, utilizing and practicing secret knowledge to their advantage. That's a Kabbalah. So what we have is that we see everything now, as I saw in the vision, that one star is beginning to absorb the energy of all of the other stars. And how this is coming is through worship. And the biggest part of what we've discovered with the cipher of the English language is we've discovered the whole story of what's really happening here on the dimension. And this story does not just exist in English, it also exists in various other languages. So, with the worshiping that has been going on, there's been the energy transfer that has been necessary to get us up to this point. What we're attempting to explain to individuals now is that you're actually moving through levels of knowledge. So you could go from 5 to 6. Let's say you start from 5, which is more or less related to Christianity, more or less the pentagram itself related to a serpent man, or as they call it, Homo sapien, which is the root to sapien, which means serpent. So serpent man, he begins as Homo sapien. So the transition of 5, which is the serpent man, as they call it, the fallen man, because there's a higher state that the man and woman that they can achieve. Interesting thing about the term fallen still means that you could rise. It means that you're still below something, so there's something up there. So it's also how you take the meaning of some of these words. So what we have is the number 5. And then so the next number after that, and that's symbolized by the pentagon and the pentagram. And then when you walk one more step up, you get to number 6. And many of those that know about astrology, they understand this is somewhere around the age of 30, there's something called a Saturnalian return. Because Saturn is the unit of time. There's a hexagon on the poles of Saturn. And many understand the correlation between the numbers 3, 6, and 9. But in this case, the number 6 is Saturn. And also in certain cases, because there's another side of Saturn, the number 7. And that's why in ancient times, as you'll read in the library, in some of those books, they said there was a confusion with the 6s and the 7s. And what this is about is that the 7s come from the sphere of L. 7, L. And L, along with our moon and Saturn, because Saturn, the moon itself is a satellite, and obviously that satellite is connected to Saturn, because if you look in the mythos, you'll see that Saturn is known as L. And what this is about is in this level of communication. Communication in itself is you actually interacting with someone. This is where you start to understand the higher levels of knowledge, but on a more simpler level. The moment that you communicate with someone, you interact with them, you intrude with them. So this symbol of the L is generally like this, straight line. And that's why many of the letters in the English language are actually the same letter, like an I and an L, the lowercase l, and many of these are the same because of this reason. So when this straight line is penetrating this circle, meaning when something is attempting to make communication, it now seeds it. So what we see here is we see the I and the O. And we see the phallus entering into what they call the yoni. And then from that point, you get, as they say, that now you get into the 7. So as you get into 7, you see that this is more or less something to do with Elohim. This is something to do with the beings who said they originally created the earth the way that it is right now. And then you can go from there and move to the 8. And when you get into the 8, you realize that then there's a feminine force there, and then there's 2 wombs, and this is an infinity that exists here. As for those that are on live stream or seeing some of these symbols, 2 planets that are connected together. And then we start to understand that there's a connection between our planet and Venus. And we're going to be doing a whole series of videos, especially a part of what we're going to be launching in the new year. And what this series of videos is about different types of initiations that are always shown on the movies. And in this case, it's the octagon initiation, which is when one crosses into the planetary system of Venus and then back into this system in what they call a blink of an eye. And they come back illuminated, which is the term that they give. And individuals that have done that and what has been the result. And so we go into the number 9, and finally we get the completion of the system in itself, as we see the number 9 perfectly ciphers into itself every time. So obviously anything that would be going on in this dimension, the culprit would be the number 9, basically, the height of the knowledge, which is shown in the Enneagram, which is basically how to determine anything that's going to happen in the dimension. And then you're done with numbers. So where we're at now, personally, where I'm at, which is also where the resistance is, because the 2 and the 1 are the same, is what we're going to do is we're going to introduce the world to the Simatic language, which is been looked into very deeply with the somatoscope. But the Simatic language is far more superior than the actual geometry that's related to this, what we are calling sacred geometry. And I would like people to understand that as the world progresses, you'll see a lot of new introductions to higher systems of existence. And it's always been the world's fault in rejecting that. Meaning, at many times with Tesla and different individuals that came with higher levels of knowledge, the world rejected it because they weren't prepared to make that step at that point. But it didn't mean that they weren't going to make that step. And so, a big part of what we're doing now is we're bringing this information, and we're going to get a lot more cohesive with the information. That's what 2011 is really about. Because remember, what we invited people to do is we invited them to come on this adventure with us in real time. So as we begin to discover things, I'm going to turn the camera back on here. So as we begin to discover things here on this dimension, we also fed that information to people in real time. And what my job and duty is I'm always an overachiever, so I just like to move fast, so that way I can bring the information to the person that needs it that's directly behind me, hoping that there's someone in front of me doing the same thing. And that's what a major part of what the resistance is going to be doing in 2011, is we're going to be linking with more people in order to get this information out. We're going to be allowing people to utilize their capabilities and their resources to boost this. And we're going to be launching spectacular programs and plans for getting this information into the hands of the people that need it in this particular time that they're in, which is they want to progress beyond this dimension. And that's all they really want to do. They don't want to get into any of the dogma. They don't want to get into any of the serving the gods. And they don't want to get into any of the sacrifice, which is all necessary when messing with religions, whether a person thinks so or not. And if you study in the library, you'll realize that. And so there's a few things that I wanted to go over very briefly, a couple notes that I made about things that are going to be taking place. First of all, the library itself, the reason why there's actually another 1,000 books that are yet to be uploaded. 500 of the books that we're to transfer over are actually too large for the platform itself, which we're going to be expanding more into and linking in with the Resistance site, which is www.resistance2010.com. So what we're going to be doing over this period of time in the next year is we're going to be organizing the library, getting certain things categorized properly, getting rid of any type of duplicate information. And in addition to that, we're going to be setting up a clear portal for anyone that wants to add information to or add knowledge to the library. Check out any of the books, meaning actually download the book, which you can do by filling out a quick form and then getting that form to us and letting us know which book you actually would like to download. There's another 500 books or 400 books approximately in our for shared count, in which we haven't moved over into the new library also because we just wanted people to see majority of the new stuff that we've acquired. And so that makes now approximately 2,500 books because there's another set that I have downstairs that will be included in this library. So that's a major thing. What I also wanted to talk about is it's a big time right now for many of the teachers to be retaught. Because there's a lot of the things that we're just figuring out, and although a lot of people don't want to admit that maybe they have been wrong in certain areas, especially if they've taught other people, there comes a time that within any expansion that you're going to discover things that are not exactly parallel to your old self and to the old ways that you used to believe. And so what we invite any person aspiring to be a teacher is to start joining our sessions that we're going to be having every month on Blog Talk Radio in regards to examining things more clearly. As in next week we'll be doing Christianity and the Bible, Gnosticism and Kabbalah under the microscope, which is where we'll actually bring out the pictures, we'll bring out the information, we'll bring out the books and the references that are necessary for a person to investigate those things with their own time and to make a proper assessment of what exactly is going on now that they have all the data, so that they can possibly change the direction of their ship, or arc as we call it. What we also have going on is I would like people to understand that because our dimension is populated with other beings, there is a heavy level of understanding that needs to be done with the difference between a god of the air, a god of the land, a god of the sea, and these differences. And the interesting part is what we started to already talk about earlier in regards to, and the screen should flip now, in regards to the type of energy that we were discussing. And so it's automatic that we can come to the conclusion that the magnetic bird type energy is an aerial spirit, while the electric energy is more of a grounded type spirit. And so this will be the difference. And then when, let's say, if you wanted to mix electricity with water, like the electric going into the water, then it would need to have a certain conversion to take place. And so basically what I'm getting to with this particular gods of the ocean, gods of the land, gods of the sea, is to understand the boundaries that exist between many of these species that some people are purportedly worshiping, and how it would immediately make one dual, or it would put one into warring with another being. Meaning that if you actually are into the dogma of the Holy See, which is Catholicism, and the serpents on land have a problem with that, then you're actually in that conflict. A big part of freeing ourselves up from the energy that's being drained from us that we're going to need now is about disavowing certain connections with things that are just extra weight. And again, in reviewing the library, one will come across many documents that show where much of the fetish and much of the idol worship and much of the trinket worship has really come from, and the things that really work and those that don't, so that one can get lighter and get themselves away from things that they don't need to be associated with. In the particular library itself, we have a phenomenal thing going on, because we have stuff that's from the 1400s all the way up to last week. And so the library, which you can look forward to within the shelf part of the library itself, and we could go to that page now. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. Let's try this. Okay, what you're looking at here on the screen now, and this is very interesting, is the actual, let's see here. I'm looking at that. Let's drop it here. Okay, this is actually the other purported largest esoteric library on the internet. And as you can see here, you can't even access the library without being a member. And of course, they charge, I believe, $100 to become a member. And there's no telling how many books are in here, if any books really. And so I thought that was interesting. And so what we'll do here is we'll go to the ESU for a virtual tour. And there we go. So that's www.esu.com/the-resistance. And here we are. So what you'll see here, for those that have logged on to the site, is you'll see the resistance shelf. And what we're going to start doing is we're going to start rotating the books that are here on the shelf, which we can actually hyperlink into Facebook and into the resistance site. And we'll cover different topics every week, and we'll get the supporting data that matches with those topics, so you can go to those books. In addition to that, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the converter, which converts much of these books to audio, and we're going to be attaching audio files to these books as we go along, so that the library itself will be very interactive. As you see here, you can access the whole library of books, as it says here, 2,039 documents. In actuality, there's about 1,200 documents in here, and the remaining documents are actually duplicates that have to be uploaded in another way in order for you to be able to access them, because their level of content. And so that's what, if you want to access a book personally, you may have to contact us at the Resistance in order to be able to get that information on which particular download to use. Okay, wonderful. So what we're going to do for a brief moment is we're going to take a short break, and we're going to go into the chat box, and we're going to give everyone an opportunity, or everyone that's present online, an opportunity to ask some questions here. And so if everyone could hold for a moment, I'm going to go ahead and pull up that box, and here we go. Okay, So we're actually in the chat box now, and I'm going to go ahead and look into the box. And I would ask individuals to not overwhelm people in the chat box. I see that there's some slight issues of someone bringing information and overwhelming the chat box with that information. And we would just ask that everyone have an opportunity to review the information. If you have something to bring forward, then you can bring forward the documents, and then we can get people into studying that and seeing and examining that and seeing if it's something that can help them. What we'd also like to take the time to do for those that are in the chat room now, that if you actually have a question, because I'm looking at the chat box. Okay, let's answer the question. How should these books be applied? Okay, so what this is basically about, and if you want to see me personally, you can see me now on live stream. How should this library be applied? Because much of the content that's here is very strong. But you have to remember that there's a situation that's going on from both sides. And we only explain this side as positive and negative. What the situation is that the individual mind is still based on what it knows, what it is able to access that's tangible and what is true. So to everyone to people that have a very limited understanding or just haven't been educated properly in certain areas, there's going to be a lot of things that they're going to not know. And and mind you, most of what we're presenting is for the Western mind to transcend, the Western mind to ascend. We're not talking to people that are into the Eastern mind state already. Because what's really being done with the resistance is, you see what the resistance really is a faction that is going in on ground zero and dealing with all the dark forces and all the negative things that have actually held people back. And we come in and we do the cleanup work, and we supply a pipeline for individuals to get the information that's necessary for them to get themselves out of what they've gotten into based on choice. So what happens a lot of times is when I say something to an individual, like if I say, look, Jupiter is Ra. Ra is Marduk. Marduk is Nibiru. If a person could look at me and then Nibiru is Zeus, Zeus is being represented by Jesus, which means the son of Zeus. And this is actually a title that means the bird, serpent, man, which is just a person who has power over their electric and magnetic functions so that they're able to do what the ones who can't do that call paranormal things. And just because you master magnetic and electric energy does not necessarily make you positive or negative. Many of the beings that have already locked into this power, men and women that have already locked into this power, are agenda-based. And agenda-based is that when a person no longer looks at what they're really doing as whether it's positive or negative, they just look at the overall accomplishment itself. Because on this dimension anyway, what you'll realize is oftentimes what you think is going to be wholesome for one person or help one person may in fact cause them harm. So what we really don't want to do, especially in 2011, is we don't want to be biased. We want to become more universal. We want to bring the message to people so that they actually understand it and that they don't question at all what we're saying because they have the knowledge for themselves to investigate. Take a drink of water here. So, how we're actually going to construct this library, because again, members of the resistance get things first. Like if you're tapping in and you see there's about, I'm not sure how many people are in this chat room. It seems to be about 20 to 30 people in this chat room. Exactly, a massive brain upgrade, especially if it's an audio. But let me just explain it as this. There's 20 users in this chat room. And so 20 people know right now about how to access this higher level of knowledge. So there's of course going to be a residual effect that happens from this knowledge getting into people's hands. The main concern that we have right now is whether or not the information should be given to people or it should be held back. What I've decided is, while everyone is still deciding, we're going to give it to the people, because I've always been a big fan of giving. And I've always been a big fan of also allowing people to have the right to make their own decision, but have everything presented before them. I think it's very sneaky to tell people only a certain part of the religion, and that is a serpent-like character. And that's why I say there's always still something going on the dimension, because I've seen these beings before. Many people reported about these beings, but they choose not to reveal themselves. In addition to that, even a lot of the energies that we're saying are here to help us could help us more than ever by just letting everyone know that they're here. And so you need to understand that there's a part of the brain that's not calculating things properly, meaning that there's a part of the brain that's literally missing parts of this equation to understand why things are happening. And so what this library is really about is about you being able to get the information and the questions that you have in your mind answered. Then what we'll continue to do is we'll separate this library into certain categories that become the primary things, supporting documents, particular belief systems and thoughts, so that you're able to go to other people and to explain to them what exactly is going on. Meaning you can take what you find in here, snip, screen capture, etc., and take it to someone and say, here's what I discovered. And it's here written, not by the person that I'm listening to, but this person that existed in this particular time, etc., etc. And so that's really, this is also a big part for me, because again, there's a lot of stuff since 2 years that we've been talking about and telling people that has been going on, but because it's not been really written down, or we haven't been able to find a book that's written it that way, then it's become basically my word against what everyone else says. In that, I've actually faced a defamation of my character by an individual who refuses to contact me, which is Lynn and Honor, because of changing certain things that were written within a document that is very important at assessing what happened here in our previous cycle of Earth that was located only in the Appendix B of the Code of the Matrix. So where we're really at with this now is that I would ask, and I'm looking at the chat box here, and I would ask I am to discontinue to actually just put this information in the chat box right now and give people an opportunity to tune into what's really going on the line now. And I ask you that out of all respect. And like we've talked before, and I've asked you to present the information itself so that everyone can look over and have an opportunity to look over it. But I don't believe now is the time, especially since you're also getting into this on an in-depth level. And continuing to do so will just result in me removing you from the chat box, and I would not like to do that. So I'm just asking you to respect that information that I'm presenting to you. So basically, there's a couple more things that I really want to go over here, and so that we don't get too far off track, because there's always a certain element of distraction. Actually, now that I look at the notes, it appears that most of this stuff we've actually gotten into, which is really, really awesome. I would like people to tune in to definitely the show that's taking place in January. We're going to be using January as a month to completely, we're just going to be using January as a month completely to talk about only the body, alkalinity levels, taking in certain types of food, the effects of fluoride, getting rid of fluoride out of the system, how to scrub the intestinal walls, different things about the trace minerals. So we're going to be getting into basically an activation extravaganza, because we're sure the energy that's coming through now is able to carry people a great deal of the way, which is that magnetic energy is definitely getting higher. And so I would request that individuals start to utilize times like today, yesterday, full moon periods to meditate, and learning how to breathe through the nose into the top quadrants of the frontal lobe, and getting the sensations that are accompanied with that. So that's going to be January. We're going to be talking about a lot of that activation. So we're now 1 hour, I believe 1 hour and 21 minutes, or 12 minutes, let's see here. We're approximately an hour and 15 minutes into the show. What we're going to do is we're going to take a brief break, and we're going to allow some of this information to sink in. We're going to provide some more links. And when we come back, we're going to get into talking about 2011, what the resistance plans to do. We're going to talk about the Wholeness Foundation, our new nonprofit organization. And we're going to be just getting into a few more things. We're going to talk about our Innerwear, which is the clothing line that empowers you. And we're going to be talking about the Code of the Matrix 2 when we return. So everyone, there's going to be a brief pause on the line. We did upload some music today, but somehow it didn't get in there. But we're okay with it. So we're just going to take this moment. Also, I'm going to just take this time before actually we pause, and I'm going to take some of these calls that are on the line and to see if these the people that are actually on these calls want to say anything. So let's see here. Okay, caller, your last 4 digits is 7146 from an 813 area code. We're just asking, do you have any questions? Thank you for tuning in to the Esoteric Radio this Sunday.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Hi, this is Anthony McNeil. I'm actually a member of the resistance. I just had a question about what the actual force of the Earth is taking in the universe. I know that you said a little bit about you say something on the left side about Earth, and you said that actual force that it is taking isn't. I'm a little nervous here. It isn't the truth on as in like the way you really see around the sun. Could you elaborate on?
Definitely. In fact, let's see if I can get you a graphic on this really fast, since it's already actually on this computer. Color, you get the thumb drive? It's actually on top of the thing downstairs. I'm going to get you a graphic on that, brother, so that you can see what the motion is really like, and why we're getting this transferred. I'm going to explain it to you. So basically, and Nassim Harriman brought this up, and it was, just ingenious, because many of us that study the astronomy and the astrology on the planetary system started to notice the spiral force. And the interesting part about it is that when we start to do our visualizations, it makes a big deal to understand where we're at in perspective of things and exactly how fast we're really spinning. I always say a large part of the reason why we're able to stand up on 2 feet is because of how fast we're spinning. We're like a gyroscope. And so what this is really about is the planet, and I'm just going to take a moment to explain before I drop this file over. The sun is barreling through space. It's not in a fixed position. And so what they're saying is the way that we actually look at Earth right now, as far as the sun being in the middle and then we're rotating around this sun, and that's what we're doing, is just as primitive as saying that the Earth is flat in our perspective of how we think about what's actually happening, how we're moving through the galaxy. The fact is that the sun is moving at hundreds of thousands of miles an hour, barreling through the galaxy, and the planets are actually spiraling alongside of it. And the graphic is here, and I'm going to drop the graphic in now. And it's very interesting, because when you start to see things that way, then you realize, okay, I'm really on a ship, for better lack of words. We're going somewhere, because we're hundreds of thousands, if not millions, and I can get more exact with these numbers later. But we're hundreds of thousands, if not millions of miles away, millions of miles, I assume, away from where we were at last year. So this literally means to me personally that we're definitely going to be experiencing some things here shortly, because as we continue to travel throughout the galaxy, eventually we would make some type of real blunt contact, not to mention the contact that's already going on now. And so what I really see within the spiritual circle now is this preparation for certain individuals to get ready to open up a new dynamic of dealing with a hyperdimensional lifestyle, meaning the real thing, understanding exactly what reality you're in, how to block things out of your reality, how to control your emotion, how to utilize energy coming from the moon, how to tap into the ley lines and find ley lines by dowsing, using your own body or even the dowsing rods to be able to find points to charge on. So this is really what the next wave, and many people would always say, no, that's not really what's going to happen. That's not what's going to take place. That's way too far out. But the fact is that it's the same thing that happened back in the Stone Age when you were attempting to convince them that we were going into space age. those people then, excuse me, I have to get some water. Those people then could not understand it. So here's the actual graphic here. And let's see if we can get this up. And so if you're tuned in the live stream, and for those that are not on the live stream, let me put that, I believe that's in the chat box now. But for those that are not on the live stream, you can actually tune into the live stream. You can see us live here, broadcasting from the lab, as we call it. And you can also get the actual screen share of what exactly we're looking at. And so I'm going to take a moment. Brother, are you still on the line so that I know if you're at, okay, so
is there any way I can ask you one more question?
Sure. Have you tuned into that live stream session yet, or are you able to do that so you can see that?
Actually, I go online on my phone, so I'm
Okay.
right now.
Okay, that'll actually it'll be available for mobile later on, so you can actually see it. But I will play it for those that are actually tuned into the call and wanting to see it themselves. But what this graphic basically shows is it shows this motion that I speak of, and let's see if we can get that plane. Okay, so what the graphic is showing is it's showing the spiraling of the galaxy from the two-dimensional perspective, and then it's panning to the right in order for you to be able to see it from the side, and then what you're seeing is you're seeing a coil type motion that's taking place here with the planetary system. So it's literally like our planet is making a huge corkscrew spiral through space. So it's really easy, obviously, because something moving at this type of force is in many planets, for us to pull other things in that we go by. And this may be a big part of how people end up in a planet, where you're cruising through space, you're in your hyperdimensional vehicle, connected with all there really is, not really aware of yourself, because that's what that's about. And then all of a sudden you get pulled into this wormhole. And then the next thing you know, you're coming out a womb, which is shaped like a vesicle, a woman's womb. And then, life has began, the training has began. So go ahead, brother, with your last question.
Okay, you said that'll be available on live stream.
Yes, this is definitely, it's actually available on live stream now. And then once we end the call, the live stream will save, and then you can play it again later on.
Okay. And also, I've been using a lot of the techniques that you presented on the site, and I appreciate your work and everything. I was looking to donate again soon. Also, I've been having really vivid dreams lately, where I can actually see what's going on and remember them and write them down. But I haven't actually been able to actually get more control of the dream, I guess I should say. I don't know what's the next step to take on that, or to actually do the things in my dreams, flying or whatnot. Is there any other things that I may be missing?
Well, beside the techniques that are talked about as far as like covering the eyes, watching the amount of intake of food before you're going to sleep, getting that breathing in like 15 minutes before you go to sleep so that you can have that pranic fuel, for better lack of words, to be able to make that travel. The next thing is, because certain people are at another level of their actually dream phase, especially if they've actually controlled dreams before. And this level is really more about, it's more about watching and being able to actually start to, because you're keeping a journal, I take it?
Yes.
Okay. So to be able to actually map out where you are, and this is let me make this a little bit more clear. These days, instead of actually controlling the dream, I'm more into where I'm at and what Dream Guy is doing, rather than trying to control him. Because after I'll tell you what's really been happening is that after 1999, and again, much of this could be the phases that we're supposed to be graduating into anyway. Because in many cases, many people were astral traveling, not even being spiritual people at all, or, lucid dreaming, and just utilizing that world to do what they can do in there. And many people were very aware that that world was open and utilizing it, but there's many of us that have tapped into after 2003 that it wasn't as easy for whatever reason. And then we've talked about a new configuration on the planetary grid, which is, what these light workers seem to be doing all the time, is sending energy and shapes and things into the grid that they don't even understand anything about, and don't understand where it's really affecting things and evoking the angels, etc. And so the thing is that what I know for sure is that one at this point should really concentrate a lot more, one, on waking life. Because remember, the more the knowledge that you get in, and remember, there's a part of this that is the meditation. It is being able to tap into those higher and subtle forces. And then a part of this is the data, to be able to get in the knowledge and data of what man's learned and what man's discovered up until this point, and man and woman have discovered up until this point, and then mix those two into an alchemical formula. And so in many cases at this point, it's now taking us to go back into books and get the construct, basically. Let's get the architect. Let's know what the architect knows, for better lack of words. How do you really build one, rather than wishful thinking that you can build one? And there's a big gap in between that. And that's really where your like we talked about in the beginning of the conversation, the ladder starts to connect, because you now see the methods of how to actually bring in more power and more energy. But still understand, this is as simple as the energy that's cycling through your body. And so if you're not already feeling surges when you're doing the whole body breathing, then you need to stop where you're at, work on your alkaline level, which is easily done by decreasing the acid in the body and increasing in the herbs, the oreganos, MMS, different things in that body. Increase that alkaline level and know where your alkaline is, basically. And start utilizing, when your body has so much energy because it's breathing, it has no choice but to, for better lack of words, fly when it goes to sleep. And this is also within working out. Even the rocking the head back and forth, what has been discovered is that it ups the body 10 watts or something of this nature, of wherever units they were measuring it, which are really high. But basically rocking the head back and forth builds the energy field of the body. Spinning as the Sufi spin builds the energy field of the body. And working out, like push-ups, sit-ups, different things of that nature, build the fire levels in the blood, or the oxygen levels in the blood. And this gets you to where when you're asleep, you're not really asleep. You don't really need the rest, and you have now you have the data, the mental, the physical, and the spiritual all combining in one. And so what we want to really do is and there's a couple other calls on the line, I'm definitely going to take those calls. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that every show we want to make sure that every show we get something for the mind, the body, and the soul. Now that's just 3. They love to already record 5, and they say some people have 7, and every number in between, about how many of these different layers and bodies they have that have different names that we don't even use because we don't speak languages like Sanskrit. So we can now say the mind is a collective of all the information and experiences that we've gained thus far. Like what we literally get as data coming into our brain through communication, through symbols, etc. So that's our mind. Our body is, I call it the playful beast. It could be more seen like a lion. It's actually a primate type life form that has all these different abilities, and it's bolted in with this mind. The soul, but the body, again, because it's playful beast, it needs to be controlled at times. It needs to be told what to eat and be forced not to eat what it wants to eat. It needs to be put to sleep at certain times, and it wants to really stay up. It has to, so there's this whole dynamic with the body, but it's the playful beast. Then we have the soul, which in itself, I only accredit to the Most High. It's like that's the all-spark, as they call it. It's everything that, it's the actual, what they call the breath of life. It's the actual dark matter itself, as they love to call it, or the thing that existed that everyone is still trying to figure out, how does it exist? It's just a straight fuel source, for better lack of words. It's not even conscious to be in what we call conscious. It's not judging and trying to figure out where it is. And so, but again, there's more of these. And we only need to really focus on, to me, 3 each session. We need to cater to the mind a little bit, tell people some things that they didn't know, get them in the know about some stuff. We need to talk to them about the body, how to get their alkalinity levels and things together so they can get maximum performance out of themselves. Remember, you're still tuning the body to get maximum performance out of it. You're encased inside of it. It's more of a cocoon, but you can really, really get a lot out of the body. And then you have the soul, which keeps you always guessing. It keeps you always knowing that you never really will know it all, which is a wonderful thing to have because it sets a focal point. It sets something that you know is already moving, that all you have to do is keep chasing, for better lack of words, heading in that direction of energy. And so, brother, I definitely appreciate you calling in and sharing your time with us and your questions. And hopefully we got the questions answered to the best possible, to the best possibility.
Well, thanks, Sevan, and, wholeness to the resistance. Thanks.
No doubt. Wholeness, brother. Okay, we have a caller calling in from the 213 area code. And caller, it's last four digits, 0747. Just asking, do you have a question or are you just listening to the line?
Well, I guess that must be me, Sevan.
Yes.
Hi, this is Vera.
How are you?
And it's not so much that I have a question. I guess it could be considered a question. But if you had a female counterpart, I would be she. I've followed your work, your life, your story is so similar to mine, except I've diverged a little more into the fields of science and have applied and integrated principles of science and principles of spirituality so that we now have what I call is evidence-based spirituality. I love what you're doing. You and I connected some time back, but somehow we got disengaged. And so here I am, once again in your energy matrix field directly relating to you. So I appreciate that, and I'd like to just pose a comment here. There are so many aspects of your work and the information that you're presenting that is so valuable. But there's more to it that I haven't yet seen you address. And I'd really like to see you go into more of the esoteric, mystical aspects of our bodies and how that is really nothing more than hard science veiled. We think it's mystical, we think it's nothing we can understand, but it really comes down to language, mathematics, and the language of light. So I'd like to have the opportunity to share more with you. There's a way to now analyze the urine and saliva that reveals every dimension of our being, what we're experiencing in the environment as well as the internal environment as well as the external environment. And I don't see where you've accessed that knowledge yet, and I'd like to bring that to you and to all of the members of the resistance.
Okay, well, knowledge in itself is, I think that's, everyone always has an opportunity, as you can definitely see on the Resistance website, has an opportunity to present their information. And I look over a lot of things. It's just part of my duty to look over a lot of the work. And I'm always a seeker looking for systems and levels that are going to allow us to expand beyond where we are. Here's what I'll explain to you. The thing is that it's not the level of knowledge that, if I can even cipher with you this level of information, which is vast, it's like you're attempting to, sometimes it's like you can plug one leak and then there's another leak that opens up, so you're trying to hold something very large. I'm also very in tune with the minds that I'm talking to. That's one thing that I do more so than anything, which is instead of using my latent state, my etheric state, or the higher level of how I know things are really working, to be able to walk a person, to get in there and walk a person to where they can finally accept some of these higher levels of transformation that have been discovered within biorhythms, within many of the things of that nature, which I do understand very proficiently. There's another thing that I have...
On biorhythms, what is on biorhythms? This is reading your DNA, reading the code, which we're programmed. Which programs our very life, our very existence, the moment we come in here, as well as what cycle we're going to be falling into in other lifetimes.
Okay, I mean, like, I think, we've definitely spoke on the Facebook before, and I know I've definitely linked to some of the sites, and I believe this is also IM. So I definitely I've linked to some of the sites that you sent me, actually all of the sites that you've sent me, and I definitely heard videos that lasted about 15 or 20 seconds about something that was miraculous, but when actually getting to the information itself, I was still having trouble getting to the information. So that's just something that I've investigated personally, but...
We have to lay low, in fact, much like you being underground, which is our website just reveals very superficial, information.
Okay, and I want to comment on that statement there, because at this point, we were laying low, but when you do stuff like what we've been doing as far as giving information to people, then it's not laying low anymore. But here's the thing, and this is something that I wanted to even just address why we have this little bit of time that's left on this dial, and it's something that I believe that you need to really know. And I believe that people really need to know also that are tuning in. And that's this. When a human activates, they immediately become aware of the other presence that's here on this dimension. I'm not sure, that's why I say, like, when I went into spirituality, I went into it to discover what was really here and to communicate with that and to see that vividly, not just in my meditation. Because I get into really high states of my own dream anyway. But the fact is that when a human activates, when those chakra sensors turn on, what I believe the most important thing to do now is to explain to everyone first what they're going to deal with, which is why I released the library today. Like when you're going through fourth, you're going through fifth, or first, many of these people, as you say, when you read their DNA and RNA, they come from different paths. But they're going to make contact with what they are, that higher self as they call themselves, which is the other one of them that's controlling the meat body version of them, that's connected through the cable. So when I've already pulled back off of this planet, I've already seen everything about how it was wired together. But the main thing was I saw the process that it was going to take for individuals to get unwired. And it doesn't start with activating them first. When you activate them, you immediately put them in front of the stuff they haven't even learned about yet, which is the other beings that are here on the dimension and what their agenda is. And so they can at least not have the problem that happens when most people come in contact with them, which we see with Masonry, which we see with many of the secret societies and the systems that are out, which is they just bow down. My contribution to this reality right now is we're all masters of something, but my contribution to reality is maybe something that it may take people to get after a while, but it's not going to stop me from actually saying it, which is we have to move away from the worships and the gods and all of this different dynamic that we've created. But to do that, how could one ever do that if they didn't ever understand it anyway? And so they can't make the jump. I've watched people try to make the jump from not having any information, a Western mind. Remember, I told you in the beginning of the conversation, I'm not talking to Eastern minds. They're built entirely different. But the Western mind...
I absolutely understand that. And this is not about the programming simply of the cable line. This is about seeing who we are as we've been created. It's like seeing our life from the eyes of God, the Most High God, not these demigods. I'm talking about who created us, who was the source. It's seeing our whole story and how it unfolds, what the plan for our life is, what the resistance is as we try to manifest that plan, that higher plan. How can you, whether you're coming in at a level of complete ignorance or at a level where you've read every document in your library, it doesn't matter, because without this information, you're just playing within these cycles.
But what you have to understand, what you have to understand is that without even knowing how to read, you're still playing within these cycles. So every level of information comes in its time. And I'm not saying that what you're presenting at all is not the correct path. That would be just as silly as me disadvocating myself. What I've asked you to do is I've asked you to, just get with me about the dialogue that you want to, how you want to bring it to them, since you can't give the information to them, since things are, you have to lay low, or, it can't be given out in that type of way. Just bring it to the resistance, or call me on Skype, and we can talk about it and get it to the people in the format, or to the people that are even ready for that format. My job here is not to hold back people from getting information, levels of information. It's to make sure that they get information. And so what I would like to say is I understand how you feel. I feel just that same way about people not understanding the power within the language. That if they don't understand what these words mean, they can't get beyond that. So you're now at another level. But isn't that all of what we have here, is that it steps, it's like, hey, this is what's for you. Because the thing is that when you notice, not one of us, it's not just one network out here. There's many, and people go from one level, this level, that level, and they collect it. What I'm saying is that because when I came into this, and I'm very aware of many different things, but when I came into this, when I saw that there was no portal for information, when no one was just giving out any data that would be relatively simple to get if someone put it all in one place, I said, that needs to be there. And so what I ask people to do is at times just understand that this resistance is created for the people that are at that stage. Then when they're ready to go beyond, they've already communicated with us and they've already went into the next level of it. Now you say there's even another level of it. So I'm saying, let's do it. Let's get another level of it going on. So I'm going to have to say thank you for your time. I have about 20 minutes left on the call, and I have a couple things that I want to talk about.
I agree with you completely, and I love to get with you. And just know that this word meets the individual where they are. Where they are. So let's connect. And
definitely. I would love to look at it, especially if it could do something with the Uranus Alive, or something that people can send samples in on, and that they get some real data that's going to help them. That would be wonderful. Okay, so let me, okay, thank you, sister. Okay, we're going to take this brief moment, since we only have about 20 minutes left, and we're going to explain just a couple things about what we plan to do next year. And what this is mainly focused around is the foundation itself. And what I began to realize is that realistically, how many people can get on a boat that's not built yet? The interesting part about the transformation is people need a place to transform. They need the actual doctrine, or the actual knowledge, the information that's necessary. Even with what Vera is saying on the line of presenting more information, even getting a curriculum together, I've thought of getting a curriculum for homeschool networks that are attempting to give the children knowledge that is going to be more beneficial to them than what's being presented to them. And so what that's about is, this is all about the foundation, which we're calling the Wholeness Foundation. And what the Wholeness Foundation is about is, we're now a nonprofit organization that is devoted towards bringing knowledge, wisdom, understanding to the people that decide to receive that. And so what we're going to be asking within the next month or 2 months is for people to consider getting involved with the resistance. And we're actually even looking for people to come on to the panel of the Wholeness Foundation, or the nonprofit organization itself, and to come with us basically into this plan of 2011, which is to increase the knowledge and the accessibility of information. And so also I wanted everyone to know at this point that if you, again, just to make it clear, if you have something to contribute, if you've discovered something, our faculties are always available, and my lines are always open. I'm not like David Icke, where you can't really get in touch with me. I'm here. You can contact me on Skype. You can send in an email, and that's going to allow you to be able to get right in contact with me. And if you have something that really needs to be presented, and you have a format that you want it to be presented in, then we're more than available to do that. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to take one more. I believe there's another call here on the line. And just so that we make sure that we get all of the calls that are on the line today. And I'm just going to check with Carlos really briefly to make sure that we have everything under control here, as far as
yes, I think we've covered a lot in this session, and I think we just got to talk about a little bit more the major future projects we're working on.
Okay. Let me get the camera going on here. So what we're going to be doing also is in 2011, we have a few different things that we're rolling out. The first main thing, of course, is the library. We haven't even gotten into 2011 before we started. But remember, you're just seeing the skeleton of the library now. What this platform actually allows us to do is it allows us to do many different things about how we actually embed the books. As you see, you can read a full screen shot of the book. And that allows you to, and then of course, if you wanted to download the book, then you get in touch with us. The only reason why we're doing that is to allow people to get the books that they need and to see exactly why they really want certain books that they're attempting to download them and propagate them through the internet. So as you see here, it allows you to view the book. Actually, let's see. Here, there's the screenshot. So what the platform allows you to do is it allows you to view the book in full screen. And as I said, we'll be attaching audio copies onto the book and allow the people who, are trying to get a lot of the information but don't have a lot of time to do that to be able to get it a lot faster. And so that's definitely a wonderful tool. What we're also going to be doing is we're going to be utilizing the power within symbols and a lot of the finite science that we've discovered. And that's what everyone has to understand. The resistance itself has been up for about a year and a half. And we're just getting off the ground. In many cases, we've had to produce much of what you're seeing with just what we have here. And that's been a challenge, but we've never allowed challenges to stop us. People should understand, though, that we are upstart. We're up and growing. We're always looking for help. We're always looking for people to get involved. And we recommend that people do that to get themselves a more grander part of life. Whatever you give, you're going to get back even more. And that works with everything. And also, we're going to be utilizing, as I was saying, a lot of what we've learned with symbolism and with two-dimensional imprints on T-shirts to actually empower the wearer of the T-shirt. And we're calling that line inner wear. And that's going to allow basically a person to be able to power their body up. We're going to be using things like in conjunction with copper, things in conjunction with certain metals, certain crystal slabs, things of this nature. We also have, of course, a magazine that's going to be launching next year. In fact, when we produce in January the first set of those shirts that I'm speaking of, we're also going to give the people who decide to utilize those shirts the first edition of the Resistance magazine, which is in the know. It's just going to be up-to-date current affair information and, of course, lots of illustrations on what exactly you need to know about what's going on right now, what we've discovered, what someone may be presenting, etc. We're also going to be doing the new code of the matrix, which is we finally decided what exact format we're going to write the book in, because as you see, we have a plethora of data, many different things that we've commented on and written about, but much of that information that we'll have a chance to in 2011 put in the correct order, because again, much of this, as my enlightenment continues, I discover and then I just put it out there, and then people have to do their own due diligence, which I think is a big part of our growth, is to do our own due diligence and to not wait for someone to give us anything, and that's why we continue to move forward. What's going to happen from here is that we're going to be starting again a nonprofit organization, and we're asking again if you are interested in being a part of that, to send some type of correspondence to me on the website or through the email or through Skype. And that seems to be it. So let me see, we have 13 more minutes on the call. We're going to just take a couple more calls here that are on the line, and I'm going to take a peek into the chat box and see if there's some questions here.
While we're ending this...
Okay, I see there's a question here.
No, while we're ending the session, I know we only have a few minutes left. Anyone, I do encourage, we are very real people here and deal in the present with actuality. So at any point in time, whether it's Sevan, whether it's I, we would enjoy to answer your questions later on or in the future.
Indeed. Isaac is saying, is there a portable USB storage for others pertaining to the library? Possible portable USB storage. What we're working out is basically a way to get a person all of what's in the library. And of course, there's about 15 gigs of information there. I've already assessed how much exactly we have there. And so that is going to be provided through another channel in conjunction with the magazine. And so everyone can stay in tune for that. Okay, and it looks like the information, or actually the questions on the chat room have been answered, and so we're going to go to the switchboard for a brief moment. Caller, your last 4 digits are 6940. You're on live with Esoteric Radio. Did you have something that you would like to say, or were you just tuning in? Okay, I'm having just a little bit of trouble hearing you. I do hear you talking a little bit, so if you could speak up just a little bit. Okay, we're just going to assume that 6940 is just on the line and doesn't really have a question. So we're going to go ahead and mute that line again. And 6940, if you do have a question, all you have to do is press 1. Okay, this is the call ended in 7146. Did we already pick up this line? There was actually 2 813 area code numbers. Okay, caller, your last 4 digits is 7146. Did we take your question already? Is that correct?
Yes, you did.
Okay, there was 2 calls from 813 area code. Okay, so go ahead, brother. I didn't mean to mute you there. Did you say something?
I was just letting you know that I'm on both lines for the 813 area.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so we have 10 more minutes left in the call. Let me see if I can. All right. Okay, so we have 10 more. We have 10 more minutes left in the call, so we're going to take that time to.
Some of the future subjects that we'll be speaking of in 2011, and if there's any other subject or topic that someone would like a further depth knowledge in, you could always research that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Let's do that. I guess we could definitely talk about. We wanted to get in. We're going to definitely get into a lot more film in 2011. I feel like personally that there's so many things that I could really uncover through the film now, because that is the higher level of programming that's taking place on the dimension. So it's easy for a person to unravel a lot of the mysteries if they understand what a lot of the symbolism means. So the part of the movie concepts that I have written down already is, one, to let everyone understand what the upside down triangle that they're seeing in Avatar and in Dune and in Iron Man really means. There's another part, as I talked about earlier, that I want to show this octagon initiation, this Venusian initiation as it's called, where it showed that several stars or actors in several movies are crashing through or coming out of an octagon. I wanted to also talk about this whole ring concept, which is now starting to emerge with, of course, the Lord of the Rings and Green Lantern, and what the Saturnalian symbolism is behind that. I wanted to talk about what I call the Luke concept, which is the name Luke. It's always signified Lucifer, or and then it gets confused with the light and different things of that nature. We wanted to talk about Luke Skywalker, George Lucas, and what all of that really means. Definitely the Percy Jackson and the lightning thief, how the individual that ended up stealing the lightning is named Luke, what that really means. Also, the phone booth. The meaning of when the 5-pointed star unfolds, how it ends up creating what looks like a phone booth, and how they showed Superman going inside the phone booth. They showed Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, him going into a phone booth, and what that really means from a hyperdimensional standpoint, like when you can use shapes to travel. We wanted to talk about the royal egg. That's been a big thing that's happening and coming and emerging into the scene. I believe a major part of that is about the Earth itself being looked at as an egg in itself, and it's about to crack or hatch. And that ties into the whole buckyball at Disney. That ties into the Mario Brothers in the beginning of the movie where she had the egg. That ties into a lot of the ancient pictures in Christianity where Mary's holding the egg. and being born of an egg, which is a big part of the whole serpent culture. We were going to talk a little bit about the Alices, and every time the movies feature the Alice, what type of programming is going on in those movies. We're going to be talking about the Davids, how there's basically this agenda that's going on the dimension to target towards younger Jewish children to get involved into the cult in order not to be bullied, for better lack of words. And this happens in Kick-Ass, where the guy's named David. He's supposedly a nerd, and then he gets the upgrade. Same thing in Jumper. He's a nerd. His name is David. Then he gets the upgrade. Same thing in with the Nicolas Cage movie, The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Another Dave there. So what all that really means, and the emergence of the Kabbalah in the field, which many of the stars and actors are showing their allegiance with Kabbalah, and what that really means for this dimension. We're going to definitely be getting into the power of the Dorje rod, the lightning itself, which is electric energy, and the multiple uses for that by these higher beings, which is the frequency, AM or AM radio, Ma, and what those names really means. So basically the first part of the new year is going to be action-packed with all types of things in order for you to be able to present to other people, to start them on that first phase of waking up, so that eventually we can get to Vera's phase and get some of your stuff tested and figure out where you're actually from. And so sending wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone on the Resistance Network. I wanted to thank so many people. I wanted to thank Kat for doing the live stream, or not the live stream, but the meditation sessions on the full moon and the new moon, her and Isaac. That's been a phenomenal time, and many people are getting a lot of results from those meditations, and she's just naturally built to do such things, and so that's been something the Resistance has really been enjoying. I wanted to thank the Miami team, or the Florida team, Pablo and Luis, out there putting it down and up and getting that information out there and getting people to sign on to the site. I wanted to thank the UK and the Europe portions of the Resistance, who've definitely been advocates and putting out that information. The first copy of Isu in the Resistance actually hit 102,000 views in 3 months. And, you know, so the knowledge itself, let's see here, the knowledge itself is getting out there. And so all I believe at this point, as long as we continue to remain diligent, as long as we continue to remain open to higher levels of knowledge and information, and continue to work on ways of applying that, then we can achieve anything that we desire from this dimension. It's just about us getting the proper construct and tools and the proper way of formulating the higher levels of thought. Last but not least, apparently what we've discovered is going on the dimension at this point is the definite approach of a larger being. And in this case, let me see exactly how much time I have to bring forth this information. Check the switchboard. Okay, I have 3 minutes. Okay, so basically much of the propaganda that you see out here as far as the sacred geometry and different belief systems, words, names, and things tie back to the Anunnaki cult, which lead later into the El, which lead also into the Saturnalian cults. It appears that this Father Time being, which everyone seems to be worshiping right now, Mr. Santa, Mr. Satan, is scheduling an appearance, which would mean basically what they call judgment. That's what this whole 2012 thing is about. And what we really have an opportunity to do now, because that is taking place, is to position ourselves correctly so that we get the maximization of the benefit of having larger enemies present. Meaning that there's always a lot of information coming from various channels, and you have an opportunity to view that information, like that Coast to Coast AM radio show that I just heard with the guy William Henry, and to see what's really going to be happening here. Everyone needs to understand that much of this is happening so that we get a lot more active about understanding exactly how we have to carry ourselves on the dimension. So what we're really dealing with is that it's all taking place in the mind. First, understand that. Whatever is taking place here is going on in the mind. So we already think that the word mind is also connected to the other word mind, which is M-I-N-E, M-I-N-D. And this connection shows us that there is, more or less, a connection between how one can be mined and mining in their mind. And so what we have going on now on the dimension possibly is a reminding. Because so many individuals have chosen not to study any of the knowledge that's available for them to study, that's equal to only that they've forgotten where they came from. So now it's about time for them to be reminded. We have only 1 minute remaining. Want to send wholeness and balance to everyone.
90 seconds.
And inviting everyone to take advantage of what's actually happening here, which is higher levels of knowledge. Get your feet wet into it. Look at the titles. Assess what it is that you need to have for your spiritual ascent. We're going to get you to where you need to go, and we're here for you outside of time.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
That's it, baby. Done.